Forces Lesson 4. Can you believe it? Forces Lesson 4. For those of you who are maybe new, or those of you who haven't remembered every single thing I've said, why not? Let's do a quick recap. So, we are looking at forces. Forces Lesson 1, we looked at how forces can be balanced or not balanced. Right, Poppy and Siri and Zach, come on, shuffle in, you're late. And we looked at how, for example, could you push with both hands a Lego aeroplane that is on fire and have it not move? How do you push something and it not move? Well, we thought about it and we did this, didn't we? So you can push pretty much as hard as you can, like that, and the thing that is already still will not move because the forces on it are balanced. And then we looked at unbalanced forces and how if you're pushing a little bit that way, but you're pushing more that way, then the thing will go that way. We have learned that forces are measured in newtons, after the marvellous Isaac Newton, that famous scientist who allegedly saw an apple fall out of a tree. Oh, look at that. There you go. Measured in newtons, which is a capital N, all right? Capital N. So if you see like 10 metres written down, you know that that is a distance, don't you? If someone says that they did something in 5 seconds, you would know that that was a time. And anything with a capital N after it, it must be a force, because forces are measured in newtons and they're the only things that are, okay? Leave that there. Right, so today we're looking at forces that make things turn around. Now, at this point in the lesson yesterday, I showed everyone a scene from my all-time favourite film, the greatest film ever made, Jurassic Park. You should probably watch it when you're a bit older if you're under 10, because it's pretty scary. But then Facebook blocked my lesson because they thought that I was just trying to screen Jurassic Park to get viewers, which is a brilliant idea. That's not what I was doing. I was showing you the clip to ask you, why is this scene in Jurassic Park so annoying? It's actually annoying for a couple of reasons. One has to do with turning forces. One just has to do with irritating direction. So I can't show you the clip. Maybe you've watched it already. If you have, good. Abby, what age is this one suitable for? Under 14. We're going to cover mainly Key Stage 3 stuff today, but hopefully in a way that people who are Key Stage 2 can understand. So what I've done is I've had to storyboard my scene from Jurassic Park. I'm just going to take you through the scene quickly, tell you what happens, and you can think about, why does Lara find this bit so annoying? It's still the greatest film ever made. Yeah, flashing you my Jurassic Park hoodie. It's subtle, but it's there. Okay, so it's quite far into the film. I'll just unflip because it's confusing. It's quite far into the film at this point. Dr. Grant, Dr. Sattler, who are very blurry here, they're in Jurassic Park with 2 kids, and the dinosaurs are all out and about. So here we've got Dr. Grant and Dr. Sattler trying to shut this door so that this velociraptor can't get in. And Lex, who's the older sister, is watching and oh my goodness, this looks bad. And then she sort of turns around and faces the camera. She's like, seems like the door thing's sorted. I'm quite small. What can I do? Oh, she sees a computer. Oh, I love computers. Brilliant. So she rushes over the computer because all the phone lines are down. Tim, her little brother, hobbles over to see what she's doing. Hey, Lex, what are you up to? You computer nerd. Oh, Tim, look. It's a system that I know. It's a system that I know. Fantastic. And Tim's like, oh, quick, get on with it. She's like, I can't remember the name. It's a Unix system, she says. I know this. It's the coolest line in the coolest film ever. So Tim's like, right, well, quick, crack on then. She's like, steady on, Tim. It's 1993. I'm going to get this computer working as quickly as I can. Meanwhile, Dr. Grant and Dr. Sattler have got the door shut, but the dinosaur is pushing against the door. And Dr. Grant's like, guys, if you could hurry up, this dinosaur's going to get through any second. And Ellie's like, all right. Still getting there. Dr. Grant's like, I can see a gun on the floor. Can you get the gun? She's like, oh, okay, I'll reach out my foot. She reaches down. She's struggling. She gets what is obviously to everyone a really very good hold on the gun. But for reasons, blurry reasons, the gun gets dropped and she shouts up to Alan Grant, I can't get it unless I move. The gun would solve all the problems. But she's just too far away. She can't get the gun unless she moves. And she can't move, can she? So, what are they going to do? Meanwhile, Lexi's like, oh, come on. And Tim's like, come on, what are you doing, Lexi? Quick, sort out the computer. And eventually the raptors end up in the kitchen. And it just gets worse, really, from then on. You should totally watch it when you're old enough to watch it. I saw it when I was 11, and I was still scared. Anyway, why do I find that scene annoying? Well, let's just get it out of the way, because this caused a lot of conversation yesterday, and we are here to talk about physics. The first reason it's really annoying is, why doesn't Tim get the gun? What, Tim, what are you doing? Just hanging around, bothering your sister. Do something useful, mate. Go get the gun. End of film. Easy. So, yes, Tim doesn't get the gun. That is annoying. But there's also a physicsy reason why. So what I'm hoping is that you probably haven't seen it yet because you don't know about turning forces, but at the end, we'll have a look at the scene again, and hopefully you can tell me why it's annoying. Right. The equipment that you needed for today's lesson was a metal spoon. All right, thanks, I'll flip. Do you know what? I won't flip. I'll just get rid of this. Yay! I'm going to do some questions in a minute, and then I won't have to flip you back. Get a metal spoon, please. Like this size is fine. Put it on the table. We've looked at how if you push something like that, it doesn't move. We've looked at how if you pull something on both sides equally, it doesn't move. I would like you to touch this spoon with both hands and make it spin in as many different ways as you can. I thought there were maybe 2, but actually when I did this lesson yesterday, I found 5. Matthew, you saw Jurassic Park when you were 5. What? Richard, if you just joined, get a spoon and try and turn it in as many different ways as you can. It doesn't need to be a complete turn. You could just like flip it a little bit. Get the spoon so that it's starting to turn, so that it's doing some sort of turning action. Come on. Are you doing this? Both hands. I'll give you 10 seconds. I got 5 different ways. Actually, I got 6 different ways. I can see you. Don't be telling me you haven't got a spoon. Everyone's got access to spoons. I make these lessons very accessible. Stop talking about Jurassic Park. Start playing with your spoons. Are you doing it? Okay, so the first thing that you possibly did is get one finger on one side, one finger on the other side, and turn it around like that. Nice. Yep, you could do that. That is definitely turning. You could turn it upside down, and you could do that again. It's better, isn't it, actually? Woo, look at that. So that's a different way of turning it. The other one you could do... What? Leanne got 7? Ah! Okay, the other one I thought of is you could do that. Press it on one end and get it flipping up. Tasmia, yes, it is the same. It is the same class as yesterday. I do repeats on a Wednesday because a lot of people can't make Tuesday. But if you turn it over, you can do the other side. It's not quite as good, is it? We're going to talk about why the spoon, when I push like that, doesn't turn as much as the spoon when I push like that. And then, oh yeah, the other one I did was I put my finger on there and then span it around like that, see? I hope you're doing this with me because we're going to look at all these different ways in a minute. And then, again, you could do it the other way, but although it's a bit weird, isn't it? Do it like that. Right, to make things turn, the main thing that you need is a pivot. You might have heard this word, pivot. Things pivot around things when they turn. So the most famous example is a seesaw. On a seesaw, this is the pivot here, because the seesaw tips either way. But maybe a good way to think of it is if you sort of stuck a knitting needle or something through the pivot, it wouldn't stop the seesaw being able to turn. So like, for example, when you were spinning the spoon like this, the pivot was kind of in the middle of the spoon, like about there. So the spoon goes around that way, the spoon goes around that way, but if you like stuck a knitting needle through the middle of the spoon, you'd still be able to get it to turn like that, wouldn't you? Whereas if you stuck a knitting needle through that bit, then obviously it would stop turning. So when you spun like that, the pivot was in the middle. When you spun like that, then it's quite easy to see the pivot because the pivot is the bit that's touching the table. And the spoon's turning around the pivot. There you go. And when we did it like this, and then the pivot was where your finger is, because pretty much the whole spoon is turning around your finger. Okay. Now, this is important. Really, all the questions that you answer at like GCSE and A-level, a lot of them, the first thing you have to do is work out where the pivot is. So I have a whole sheet on where the pivot is. Come and tell me where the pivot is in these different examples. Oh, I've just realised that I've got a 2-wheeled wheelbarrow, which caused a lot of arguments yesterday. And I meant to take the wheelbarrow off and I forgot. It's okay, you guys can have the same arguments as the class did yesterday. Show you thinking, show you engaged. But here we are. Where is the pivot? Probably easier for you to look at pivots and think about them rather than me explaining what they are. So if you've got this sheet, you print it out, you can just circle it, or you could just write it down, maybe do a little sketch if you like, if you haven't got the sheet. So I've given you an example of the seesaw. This is the pivot of the seesaw, okay? So can you tell me where the pivot is on all these things? And then some of you are quite old today, aren't you? You can crack on with these ones, which are a lot harder. Okay, let's go through it then. So the door, the hinge is the pivot. Be careful, the hinges obviously are what attach the door to the frame, but the whole thing is the pivot here. It's pivoting around. About sort of this line, isn't it, through the door frame. The balance is C. Whatever this thing is, that bit is the pivot. It's turning around that bit. The scissors, did you get that it was in the middle of the scissors? That bit, so all the bits of the scissors are turning around that little circle. Just checking out some comments. All right, Jess, Ezzy and Matty. Hiya, Rowan. Right, 2C, yeah, well done. The wheelbarrow, right, people were saying C yesterday, and I was like, oh, really? Oh, no, it is B. It's B, isn't it? It's B. Because you lift up the handle at A. You picture you've got a wheelbarrow in front of you, you lift it up. It would pivot on C if you pushed it down, but usually, this was confusing people, I've got this little diagram of a wheelbarrow, but sometimes that's just a stick. That's just the thing, really, that just rests it on the ground. Definitely B. It's pivoting around B because that's the wheel that's touching the floor. And you're lifting it up. All right? I won't hear anything else. Christine, hello, giving me some answers. C. Yeah, you're saying C. Chopsticks is C in the middle, yeah. And the spanner, it was C. I try to confuse you because it looks the same on this side, but that's where the little nut is, so someone's cranking it like that. Okay, what words might complete this sentence? A seesaw is still when the turning forces are something and something. If you have seen previous lessons, that will have given you a clue because Newton's law uses this language a lot. If the turning forces are equal and opposite, then a seesaw is still. Let's have a little look at that. And then we'll try and work out the equation together. Ooh, just squeezing. C7 is C. Yes. Thanks, Alina. Yes, 7 was C, well done. Yeah, right, so let's have a look more about things being balanced then. So we get our seesaw out. It's a bit of a boring example, but it's a classic. How would you make the forces on a seesaw balance? How would you say you've got like identical twins, they're the same in every way, they weigh the same. How would you put them on the seesaw so that it balanced? Well, if you put one on this side, right, by the way, for Key Stage 2, if you're younger than 11, what you need to know about turning forces, strictly speaking, is that, okay, now I do need to flip. What you need to know if you're under 11 is that things can go clockwise, like that, the same way that a clock goes, that way around, or they can go anti-clockwise, which is the opposite way to the way that a clock turns. Okay, so if you're under 11, congratulations. if you know that, you just passed your exam, all right? So if you put a twin on this side, then the seesaw would want to turn clockwise, wouldn't it, like that? And if you put another twin on this side, then the seesaw would want to turn anti-clockwise. And if they were both the same weight, so we looked at weight a lot last week, I'm not going to go into it too much, but weight is what pulls you down to the ground, and weight is a force. So say each twin weighed, I don't know, 40 newtons, they probably don't, but we've got 40 newtons pushing down on that side, 40 newtons pushing down on that side, so they're equal forces, they're the same force, but they're opposite, because one's going clockwise and one's going anti-clockwise. So the seesaw is balanced. I've been saying turning forces. That's not quite right, I'll tell you why in a minute. But can you see anywhere where you could put one person where the seesaw would not turn? Have a think about that. Could you put one person on that seesaw and have it not turn anymore? Now, let's get to the equation, eh? I've been giving you the equations, I'm not going to give it to you straight away. I'm going to ask you to work it out, alright? So the equation for a turning force is, the proper word for how much something turns is a moment. I know it's really weird. The proper word for how much something turns is a moment. So if it's a big moment, it turns a lot. If it's a little moment, it doesn't turn very much. Well done, Christine and Helen. Yes, Emma, give me some good answers. So yeah, I knew that I was a proper physics teacher because I googled moments the other day to get an image for this, and it just came up with like balloons and people kissing. I was like, what? The internet is broken. Why? I need to learn about moments, not these stupid... Oh, I get it. Yeah. So sorry, it's a really funny word, but how much something turns in physics is called a moment. And a moment equals something times something else. There you go. What changes how much something turns? So last week, for example, we looked at weight. And we said that weight was equal to mass in kilograms times like how much gravity a planet has. So really big planets, more gravity. Little planets, less gravity. Okay, so we looked at how, like, say your mass is just how much stuff is in you, basically, which is measured in kilograms, and how much gravity a planet has. The bigger a planet is, the more gravity it has. So if you got something that was really, really massive, really big, and you put it on Jupiter, it would weigh a lot. Whereas if you took a really small mass, like a mouse, and you put it on, like, Mercury, which is a small planet, it would not weigh as much. That would be a way of getting a very small weight. So weight gets bigger or smaller depending on mass and how much gravity a planet has. So what two things decide how much a thing turns? Well, I'm going to go and ask you to play with a door now. Be super careful, all right? There were some injuries yesterday. I want you to go over to a door and give it a push in all different places. Push near the handle, push near the hinges, push in the middle, try different things. See if you can work out what two things you can do to make the door open more or open less. Like I say, don't go too near the hinges, all right? Be careful not to get your fingers trapped. This could be incredibly painful. But I'm going to absolutely silence myself now so that you can go away, play with the door. Could be a little cupboard door, could be a proper door, doesn't matter. Probably stand on the side where you get to push it, okay? Maybe not allowed to play with doors. Have you got like a little cupboard or something? Maybe just like hang your arm. If you're really struggling, you've not got any door at all, just like hang your arm in front of you. Try and get it loosey-goosey and like push it and see if you can work it out. Because actually your arm is a good example of a moment. It's a hinge. All right, not a word from me. You've got 1 minute. Go to a door or a cupboard or use your arm. See if you can find out what two things make a thing turn more or less. Rebecca, lean against it. Yeah, you can push or pull. They're both forces though. I said I wouldn't talk. I'm not going to talk. I'm going to read your comments in slightly creepy silence. And then in 40 seconds now, I'm going to talk about what you said. Harvey, I think that was you, wasn't it, saying that. Elliot, can you be a bit more precise then in your D as well? Yeah, if you're saying distance, can you be a little bit more precise in language? Oh, come on, Charlie. Rebecca, you could push or pull it. Yeah, all right. People are starting to come back. I'll give you 10 more seconds. Oh, Caris. Nice. This is what I like. See, I like it when people kind of write sentences rather than words, because if you write a word, you might have just read it somewhere. Whereas if you write me a sentence that's your own sentence, that probably means that your brain is doing exercise and you're thinking, which is an excellent way to learn. Nice. Okay, yeah, so Finn and Caris saying the same thing. Excellent, you two. Rachel, all right. Yeah, let's go. Well done. So, a couple of people noticing. Yes, Sarah. Oh, beautifully precise language there. Sarah is saying, distance from the pivot point, good. So some of you have noticed that when you push near the hinge, you need a lot more force to get the door open, don't you? It's almost like door handles were designed like that. So the further away from the hinge you are, if you do the same push like all along a door, you might notice that if you push where the door handle is, it opens a lot, whereas if you do the same push near the hinge, it hardly opens at all. You're right. One of these things is, you could just say distance, that would be perfectly acceptable, but you know, you guys like it at a higher level, don't you? So we'll say distance from the pivot. I can never remember how to pivot. Distance from the pivot, good. So like the hinge was the pivot, distance from the pivot. And the other thing, yeah, a lot of people saying, well done if you said push or pull. Exactly. How much force you use as well. So if you pushed with a really hard force near the hinge, you might get it to open as much as if you pushed with a little force further away, because you can change these two things. Marvellous. Let's quickly look at the units and then I'll give you some questions to do. So force is measured in newtons, as we have discussed. Distance in physics is always measured in meters. Obviously distance can be like a centimetre or a kilometre, but when you're doing questions, you've always got to make sure that you change it into meters again. A lot of people don't know this about units. I teach a lot of A-level kids who don't know this about units. If you've noticed this, I think it really helps. So if you've done any maths, have you ever had to find like the area of a square? So say there's a square that's 2 meters by 2 meters, and your maths teacher's told you to find the area of that square. A lot of you probably know that you would do 2 meters times 2 meters. So the answer is 4, because 2 times 2 equals 4. But you ever thought about the fact that these are called the units, the meters or the seconds or whatever? You do that. You do the same thing to the units. You times the units. So if you wrote that the area of a square was 4 meters, your maths teacher would be like, "No, what are you talking about? It's 4 meters square, because 2 times 2 is 4, and a meter times a meter is a meter square." So often, like even at A-level, they lose marks for not knowing what the units of a thing are. But you can work it out, because here, a moment, how much a thing turns, is newtons times meters. So what is the unit of a moment? How do you measure moments? In Newton meters. How nice is that? A big N and a little M. Oh, someone's confused. Right, well, I'll give you some questions, and if you're confused, now would be a very good time. Oh, actually, I'll do one example. Because the question's a bit tricky. And then we'll you can ask me some questions if you're a bit confused. But probably the best way is just to get an example. So, anyone ever been on a diving board? Just the thought of being on a diving board makes me feel a bit... But you maybe know that the further out you go on a diving board, you can sort of imagine the bendier it gets. That's because this bit of a diving board is the pivot. It's the thing that the diving board is kind of turning around. And say this person weighs like 50 newtons. So the moment, the turning force, is equal to the person's weight, or the force, whatever force is pushing down. In this case, it's the person's weight, times the distance, okay? Oh, loads of room. So here, let's say that this person is 1 metre away from the pivot. The turning force, the moment, how much the diving board turns, would be 50 newtons times 1 metre, which would be, say it with me, but say the units as well, 50 Newton meters, all right? So that's how much the diving board would be turning. If the person was right over here, they still weigh 50 newtons, they're still pushing down with a force of 50 newtons, but now maybe they're like 3 meters away. So the moment, how much it turns, would then be 50 newtons times 3 meters, which would be 150 Newton meters. So that's kind of the physics behind why when you get right to the end of a diving board, it starts to like wobble more, okay? Right, questions for you then. Now I've had a lot of people requesting that they learn stuff about pets. Okay, here's your example, right? You guys wanted pets. Here's your pets. We've got dogs falling onto seesaws and there's a load of slime underneath them. Which dog gets slimed, okay? Which dog gets dunked in the slime? That's what I want you to tell me. So this whole thing is an example here, because it's quite complicated, this, isn't it? It's like 2 questions in one. So here's Patch and Fluffy. Patch weighs a little bit more than Fluffy. Patch is pushing down with a force of 5 newtons. Fluffy's pushing down with a force of 4 newtons. They're both dropped onto the seesaw at the same time. The anti-clockwise moment is just how much the seesaw is turning in this direction. So what is Patch doing? Well, his force pushing down is 5 newtons and he's 1 metre from the pivot. So how much Patch is turning the seesaw that way would be 5 newtons times 1 metre, which is 5 Newton meters. Newton meters is kind of, I know it's a very sort of weird, confusing. Yeah, exactly, Leanne. The moment how much a thing turns is measured in Newton meters, which I know sounds like a very weird foreign language, but you just kind of have to trust. How much something turns is just measured in Newton meters. So that's how much Patch is turning the seesaw, 5. And how much Fluffy's turning the seesaw is how much force he's pushing down with, so 4 newtons times 2 meters, because how much something turns is force times the distance from the pivot. And Fluffy is 2 meters away from the pivot of the seesaw, and 4 newtons times 2 meters is 8 newton meters, which is more of a turn than Patch. So, as you can see, Fluffy is the one to get dunked in the slime in this scenario. There you go. So have a go at those. These ones, I haven't said, these ones are super challenging because, like I say, you're all different ages. Challenging. The last one, you can only answer this one if you came to last week's lesson and you've got a good memory. So Patch is turning the seesaw anti-clockwise by how much? So the moment, how much it's turning is the force times the distance, which is 5 times 3. So Patch is turning the seesaw with a moment of 15 newton meters. Well done if you got 15, massively more well done if you wrote newton meters as well. Excellent, you've got to put your units in. Very good habit to get into. Shep is turning it 8 newtons times 2 meters, which is 16 newton meters. So yeah, Shep, you go in the slime. Smoochie is, you would do 3 times 3, which is 9 newton meters. And Lala, you'd do 6 times 3, which is 6, 12, 18 newton meters. So Lala's definitely the getting dumped there. Tinks and Fluffy. Tinks, 2 times 2 is 4. Are you putting in your units if you didn't put your units in? If you were just like, oh, I know, easily, put your units in. Fluffy is 1 times 2, 1 times 4, which is also 4. So yes, well done if you spotted. Neither of those guys are getting dunked. They're perfectly balanced. No, Doggo's not 5 newtons either. Right, these ones, yes. So this seesaw is balanced, which means that the anti-clockwise moment and the clockwise moment must be the same. So let's work out the anti-clockwise moment. That's 10 newtons times 3 meters, which is 30 newton meters. And, well, so it must be the same on that side. So if this side is turning, the moment is 30 newton meters, then we will go 30 newton meters equals something, whatever Janet's weight is, times 2. So 30 equals something times 2. What do you times 2 by to get 30? It's 15. So Janet weighs 15 newtons. Well done. Make sure you didn't write newton meters by accident because you were finding Janet's weight there. Woofy, it was 1 times 5. So 5 newton meters pushing down on this side. But, oh, did you notice? Did you notice? That was proper mean of me. It's 200 centimeters. You can't put centimeters into this equation because moments is measured in newton meters. You can't times newtons by centimeters and get newton meters. And no, before you ask, you can't just say that the moment is in newton centimeters. No. So you've got to convert this. How many meters is 200 centimeters? Well, 100 centimeters is 1 meter. So 200 centimeters is 2 meters. So then you do 2 times 2, which is 4 newton meters. And Woofy, mate, you were getting slimed. And Terry and Doggo, yeah, this one you had to come last week. This was just for the people who are storming ahead. So we found out last week, it's on YouTube if you want to go and watch it, that mass, how much stuff Doggo is made of, is measured in kilograms. And to find out something's weight, you times on Earth, to find out something's weight on Earth, you times their mass by 10. Because, well, it's not very precise language, but like the gravity, the strength of gravity on Earth is 10 On the moon it's less, on Jupiter it's more. So if you times 1 kilogram by 10, you get Doggo's weight, which is 10 newtons, and then it's 10 times 2, which is 20 newton meters on this side, and it's 15 newton meters on that side. So it is Doggo. Oh, Doggo gets slimed, my goodness me. I'm exhausted. Looking up and see the comment, I mean Woofy. Could I explain Tinks and Fluffy again? Oh yes. Wait, Tinks and Fluffy, where are they? Oh yeah, Tinks and Fluffy. So these guys are totally balanced here because 2 times 2 is 4 newton meters pushing on this side. But 4 times 1 is also 4 newton meters pushing down on this side. So they're pushing down clockwise and anti-clockwise the same amount, so the seesaw's balanced. If you Newton, you'd say that the forces acting on the seesaw were equal and opposite, or the moments, I should say, on the seesaw are equal and opposite. It's turning the same amount that side as it is that side. Oh, thanks, Harry and Headley. That was a nice comment to read as I get my breath back. Nearly time, isn't it, for us to look at that Jurassic Park scene and say, why? It is so annoying. Did you get the thing about the seesaws? A lot of you did. So where would you put someone on the seesaw if you didn't want it to turn at all and you only had one person? You would put it here, on the pivot. Just like if you push a door, actually on the hinges, it's not going to go anywhere. And why is that? It's because how much something turns is equal to the force times the distance from the pivot. So if you're on the pivot, your distance from the pivot is 0. So it doesn't matter if it's a person who weighs like 5,000 newtons, the thing's not going to turn because 5,000 times 0 is still 0, right? Which is why that scene from Jurassic Park is so annoying. You can move! You're not doing anything! She's like literally pushed up against the hinge. So annoying. So yeah, there you go. Jurassic Park, best film ever. But that scene though, come on, so annoying. I mean, she's a biologist, isn't she? She doesn't know. She's great with plants. Anyway, thank you for coming, everybody. As ever, I have got a GCSE question for you, if you want to stick around. But I'll do my advert first because you have worked incredibly hard. I mean, really, like seriously, if you haven't picked up a pen and you didn't get any of those questions right, and you have just watched all of this without like going, that's brilliant. Give yourself a huge pat on the back. It is going in, and eventually you might read something and it'll suddenly slip into place, or in like 5 years' time you'll be like, ah, that's what you meant. Very well done. Thank you so much for coming and giving me all these comments. I love it. Right, yeah, I'll do my little ad. This is for the adults. Kids, you can just relax if you like. And then we'll do the GCSE question. So hello, I am Lara. I run this science communication business called Theatre of Science. I've been doing a show a week since lockdown. Those are the really fun ones. There's like a Lego story time. Look, it's all set up from last week. So on a weekend, 10 o'clock every morning, I do a Lego storytime show, and there's activities, you bring stuff and you join in. It's birds this weekend because of the big garden bird watch. So I've been doing one of those since lockdown, and then I started doing this home ed as well, which I love. This is like proper teaching. Oh, Emma, you're very welcome. Yeah, but then during lockdown, I'm just coming on at 1:30, aren't I? And just chatting about something. So it's fossils today. If you want to bring a piece of bread and some pasta, we will look at how fossils form. Or it's the solar system tomorrow, popular one. Or it's hot air balloons on Friday. If you liked it, you can go, when you've gone off from this, bye Freya. You can go on my Facebook page and click like. It's like my Facebook page. It makes me so happy. And there's loads, it's very addictive. It's like a computer game, like, oh, they're rising. Yeah, if you like my page, that'd be nice. Or I have got this website now called Patreon, where people are supporting me with £3 or £5 or £10 a month, and they get various thank yous for doing that. So people supporting me with £3 a month, I will send you some rainbow glasses, which is like, will make you see rainbows. And you will be getting those very soon, by the way. Thank you so much to the people who've signed up. And if you support with £5 or more, you get this magazine that I bring out every 2 months, and this one's on snow, and it's at the printers now. It's going to be in my hand soon, and then it's going to be in your hands. I'm very excited. Thank you very much. I am very much prioritising putting stuff online, but thank you so much to everyone who signed up. It's just really exciting. It's like my job. I got a job. Yay, thanks. Right, let's do a GCSE question. This is not any old GCSE question. Jack, you are most welcome, free to go, absolutely. Oh, Lucy and Josh, that's great. Bye, Matthew, if that is your real name. Yeah, so we often do a GCSE question at the end, don't we? Last week we actually did an A-level question. This is an IGCSE question this week. It's what I would recommend you do if you want to do like A-level physics, because it sort of warms you up. It covers a lot of stuff that GCSE doesn't cover. So here we go. These are your IGCSE questions. The diagram, I didn't ask you to bring a calculator, so if you can't do the maths, you haven't got a calculator, don't worry, you can just tell me how you'd work it out. The diagram shows a gardener using a steel bar to lift a tree stump out of the ground. When the gardener pushes with a force of 300 newtons in that direction, see, the tree stump just begins to move. Use the equation in the box to calculate the moment produced by the 300 Newton force. Now, I've said here, the trick is to just not be horrified by this language. Moment equals force times perpendicular distance from the line of action of the force to the axis of rotation. Shh, you know what it means, don't you? You've only got two numbers. What's it mean? And this one, this was very challenging. Not a lot of the IGCSE kids got this in their exam. A cyclist pushed on the pedals with a constant vertical force of 300 newtons. Here's different diagrams of how they pushed down when the pedals were like that, when the pedals were facing upwards, when they were diagonal, and when they were totally horizontal. Which position, A, B, or C, gives the largest moment on the pedal? If you're not sure, don't worry too much about these numbers, to be honest. You could just picture a bike and knowing what you know, which one of these is going to make the bike turn more. Yes, Lauren, mass is measured in kilograms. Well done, Elliot. Yeah, we did this last week. Mass is measured in kilograms and weight is in newtons, yes. I am Megan and Sophie. I know, Sadaf, I get paid for my job. It's crazy, isn't it? No way would I have planned a business like this. I'll just do things for free and some people will pay me, even though they could access it for free if they wanted to. People are awesome. Justine, don't apologise to me for not knowing it. It's an IGCSE question. If you knew it straight away, then I would not have a job, would I? Yeah, this one, well done if you said that it's 300 newtons times 1.2 metres. You didn't even need to change it. Like often, like, you know, the later questions were about numbers and they're trying to trick you here by making it centimetres. You didn't even have to do that. It's just 300 times 1.2, which, don't worry if you didn't have a calculator and you couldn't work it out, but, or, I don't know, you guys are good at maths, aren't you? You could probably do that in your head. 360, and don't forget, Newton metres. Did you write your units down? So if that had been a 2-mark question, you'd have got 1 mark for 360 and 1 mark for Newton metres. Well done. What about this one then? Oh, Amber, age 9, says C as the length is longer and B wouldn't move. Come on. All right, Nazi. Nice, Amber. Amber, you are absolutely right. So what I didn't teach you is that when we talk about distance, what we really mean is the distance, the distance from the pivot. So did you all get that the pivot is this bit in the middle? That's what the pedals are pivoting around. And what you kind of got to do is draw an imaginary line up from the pivot. So here, the distance from the pivot, we would say, I mean, you wouldn't know this, because you would have learned this if you were doing IGCSE. The distance from the pivot is actually quite small. Here, well done, was Amber who said, you know from experience, if you push right down on a bike pedal from that angle, it's not going to move at all. Whereas this one, yes, the distance from the pivot was the furthest. So the answer was C. Very good, you lot. Like I say, it is absolutely not about getting the answers right at this stage. It's about sticking around and having to think, oh my goodness, there's going to be a horrible accident. I'll have to change that around for next week. Right, you lot. Thank you so much for coming. Wow. Yeah. Okay. 45 minutes that lesson was in the end. Well done if you're still here. Poppy and Siri, you are most welcome. Thank you for coming. I've even done my ad. I can just chat now and say bye-bye. Have a lovely rest of the day. I might see some of you 1:30 for fossils, or I might see you next week. Whatever you do, yeah, have a lovely time. Thanks for coming. It means a lot. Bye. Bye, Ethan. Bye, Sadaf. Always good to see it, Sadaf. I know that it's not Sadaf, is it? I know it's not.